Oh, I had not heard from, why is my brain going blank? Daisha, I hadn't heard from Daisha, but you've got a quorum, so you could get started.
All right. Do we need to take roll since we're on Zoom? No.
No, we're good.
I know we do have a new member and a returning member. So I don't know if we want to take a minute and go around and introduce ourselves, or if we want to wait to do that when we have more people.
Why don't we wait a little bit also because we want to probably start discussing the demolition requests.
Okay.
And then we can go back when we've done with the business that others need to be listening to, and then we can kind of go back and you can everyone can introduce themselves.
Okay. I guess let's start with reviewing last month's meeting minutes.
So looking at this, Doug wasn't there and Carol wasn't there. So in terms of a motion and a second, it's going to have to be Jane, Angela, Steve, well, the three of you, because Anne as the chair can't make the motion or second it.
I read them earlier. I move that we accept them as written.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. All right. So we don't have any public hearings this evening. Do we have any visitors?
So just as a reminder, visitor comments are for something that's not necessarily on the agenda. So if you want to state that if anyone wants to raise their hand, if they have a comment for anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay. Do we have any visitors present who would like to comment on anything that is not listed on the agenda?
None.
Okay. So we're going to move on to new business, which we do have 2 demolition recommendations. One of them being a property that was on last month's agenda, and staff's recommendation was to hold off on the demolition to possibly do some more research, since this is quite an old structure. So it is again back on this month's agenda. And I did some digging after last month's meeting, which took me down quite a rabbit hole of the internet to try to find anything I possibly could. And I did find some information. I'm not sure if it's enough. I was not able to really research the actual people that we found associated with the property and possibly with the house, the structure. So if you want to review, I know Mara did include what we did find on the memorandum.
And if anyone needs anything, I took the bullet points, the memorandum bullet points, and put it onto 2 slides. And then we do have the pictures from the packet and then the real basic information. So if there's anything anyone needs, I've got a couple slides we can move back and forth, but anything you might need for your discussion.
I know the farthest I got with researching the Lovejoy family, Mara had found that one of the children, that Thaddeus Harvey Lovejoy, who went by Harvey Lovejoy, who ended up living in Webster Groves in a different area. I did find him listed with the post office. So he did work for the post office in the city. but that is as far as I could find any information about them.
There is a somewhat famous Lovejoy, at least in certain religious circles, named Elijah Lovejoy. He was one who helped with the Underground Railroad in Alton, Illinois, and is sort of revered in at least the Presbyterian Church. I don't know if he has any connection to
Yeah,
Lovejoy or not.
I tried my hardest to find a connection to them, because that he definitely is a historic figure. But unfortunately I really wasn't able. It was kind of a common last name, actually. So yeah, I didn't find any ties between this family and him.
So I went out there today to look at the house a little bit, just to see. I was kind of curious about the integrity of it. It looked as though the shape was like the plan shape was the same, had been the same. So I wanted to make sure it doesn't look like it's the same. If somebody built on half a house, then it's kind of pointless if it's not even the same house, right? But the most interesting thing that I found is that this house, 713, and then the one next door, 725, are identical, both built in 1899, which I thought was fascinating. They're these two little, paired gable, Queen Anne kind of style houses that are just alike. They were built just alike. And so, that was kind of interesting to me. The house has been, it has siding over the shingles that there were originally shingles. You can see those underneath the siding. Looks like it does have the original wood windows in there, but it doesn't, as far as the integrity of the building, it's pretty good. And the one next door is too, if there's any reason to keep them. I guess I'd love for us to be able to find something, but, and architecturally, I don't know that that's enough, that there's twin 1899 buildings. It is unusual. So just thought I'd add that bit of information.
Now, Mara, I don't know if you were able to share any of the information that we found to those that are petitioning for this demolition. I know it's the neighboring house that wants to buy this house to tear it down. So I don't know if they're working with a developer or an architect or.
So my original meeting was with an architect, the architect for the potential purchasers. But then the only recent conversations I've had are with the children of the owners of the property. So we have not shared any additional information of what we had found thus far with the potential purchasers.
And I guess, this is the first property in a long time where we've held it over to the next meeting. So I guess my question kind of is, where do we go from here with this? If we can't find any more information, is it pretty much just up to a vote? Is it, what else can we do? Or, if we wanted to hold it again, what would we have to do in order to have that happen?
So there is a timeline that gives a definitive number of days. If you plan to hold it over again for research, the timing starts with the date in which this application was turned into the HPC. So you have a limitation of 120 days. But in that time frame, you have to sort of make a effort to either start a designation or do the vote to give permission for demolition. Now, just because you've given a vote for permission for demolition doesn't necessarily mean that it will get demolished, but they don't have to come back to you again. We've had a couple that you've approved for demolition that someone else has then come back in and has renovated instead. It doesn't happen very often.
Sorry, I clicked out of something.
So yeah, the time frame is 120 days from when they turned things in. So 120 days from December 20th, I believe is the date that I found, or 21st is the date that I found on their application from when they turned everything in. And that's if you should choose to hold it any longer. And the question is whether you can find anything else of any, information worth starting an actual designation before the city council of a historic structure.
So really, we could hold it for one more.
You could hold it for one more.
One more time. If we decided to try it.
Yes, you could. But I'd want to make sure that you had some very definitive steps of what you were going to do. I know Anne spent quite a bit of time doing research. I was able to not really help much with that from a staff standpoint. I was able to look at some plats and maybe zoom in a different way to help get some names able to be read and things like that. But there's nothing else that we have here at City Hall that can be found.
Yeah, I called the county recorder of deeds just to see, I know with COVID, they weren't allowing people in to do research in Clayton. They are now, but you have to make an appointment. You only get an hour basically, and their appointment times are between 10 and 2, Monday through Friday, and they fill up. Like when I was on the phone with the girl, she was like, you might want to go ahead and book an appointment now, which I'm unable to do. I work, Monday through Friday during the day. And I don't even know as far as like how far out it would be to be able to get over there if we wanted to do any deed research. The only other thing I was thinking was, Mara, I know we talked about possibly trying to get a newspaper.com subscription. I know the library has one that you can use, but you have to be on premises to use it. And I haven't been able to make my way over there. And the only other thought I had with that is, with newspapers.com, that helped me in my own research for my house. You could put in your address, you could put in a name, and usually you would pull up some information articles. So that I didn't know if, doing something like that with the names we have, or even just the addresses, would give us any more additional information.
And we do have the ability to do the subscription. I do have that ability. I just hadn't taken that next step yet.
Okay.
So I'm curious, the other house that is right there does have a century plaque. And it's clearly built the same. So for the century plaque, you have to have some history for the house, right? As far as who owned it and so forth. Would we be able to get the information for that house and see what that says to see, they looked at it found it almost odd how much they were the exact same details of each little thing about them. So they're clearly built the same. They're the same. They have the same year and everything else. So if we found that house, maybe we could find out some information about the pair of houses, which would be this one, include this. Can we?
Was that the 725?
Yes.
Did you happen to notice the names on the plaque for that one?
Well, I didn't go over since, I didn't really, there's set back a little from the street. So I was, even though we could go to this one, I wasn't going to go tromp
I
through
mean,
their yard.
if they have a century plaque, that would be on file with the Historical Society.
Right,
They're
that's
the
what I
ones
was
that
thinking.
issue it. So yeah, I mean, that's something we could reach out to them about.
I agree that that might be a good place to look for leads, because I did drive over there today and I was immediately struck by the same thing Angela was, that they appeared to be almost like sister houses, because they're remarkably similar. The neighboring house does have what appears to be more of the original details and siding, but then, you know, there's new siding over the subject house, but the original siding may be under there. So I do think that Angela's suggestion about using the neighboring house that's almost identical to look for leads might be potentially fruitful.
I can contact the Historical Society and get that information.
I think we have that information.
But we just have the listing on a spreadsheet. They would
Right.
have the actual application with all the documentation.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah, yeah, we have just a basic spreadsheet that they gave us so that we could put it on a map. But no, they actually have to provide, people come to the city all the time trying to get the actual proof that it was built the age that it was. So they have to do the deed research and all the other information. So that information would be more that what we would be looking for.
Gotcha.
I have to tell you that having been on the Historical Society and president of it for a while, those files are very hit and miss. There was a period of time that there were not good records being kept, and there are no files for some of the houses. And there are extensive files for some of them. I know that in recent years, the requirements were stepped up, and there are better files for people that have applied in the last few years. But I wouldn't guarantee that you're going to be able to find a good file on any particular house. It's just hit and miss.
I live in a historic house. I have a plaque and my house is not in the records.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
I think
it didn't make it there somehow. Yeah.
in the early years in the inception of those plaques, they really weren't keeping good files. And it's really been subject to whoever was in charge of that program at the time.
Yeah.
So there are good files and there are no files in some cases.
What would our historic significance of this house be? Would it be twofold? One, the Lovejoy connection, and secondly, the fact that it's got a sister house next to it that's the same. Would it be two things? Would it be one? Would it be?
Sometimes it can be multiple. So it can be both the significance of people who lived there over time. It can be who built it originally. It can be the establishment of its location. Or it can be something architectural, like having sister houses. So there are probably 4 or 5 levels to it. It just depends on how much you want to do the research for all of that. And if you were going to do it as a pair of houses, you would then probably need to be also coordinating with the neighbor next door to designate them together, possibly.
If we were to designate them as a pair, and say the other house is fine with that, with this one, I mean, would we have to have the approval of the current owners in order to do that?
Obviously, it is preferable to have the approval of the current owners. The way that the process works is you send a letter to someone that you are proposing to designate. Like if you're proposing to designate an area or a specific structure, it goes before a hearing, and those people, anyone can speak at those hearings because it's public hearings. it's a public hearing before the Historic Preservation Commission, and then it's a public hearing that moves forward to council. If it gets approved and move forward. If you have someone who absolutely does not want it, that is taken into account in making the determination as to whether to designate it or not.
So that would be probably kind of tricky in this situation, given that they're wanting to sell it. And I'm assuming they know the people that want to buy it and what their intentions are, I would think.
So just as a reminder, this is not a public hearing, but you do have people on the meeting that if you did want to ask any questions of them, you do have the ability to open it up to them. Again, not a public hearing, just throwing that out there.
Does anybody have any questions that would like to open it up to those that are on the call? Do we have any further questions regarding any of the research that we have found, or thoughts about where to go from here with that? So then I guess we just have to make a decision. Do we want to continue to hold off on this to do additional research, which obviously, we've got a time limit against us, or I guess, do we put this to a vote?
I personally wouldn't mind holding off and try to do a little bit more research. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but.
I have just opened up the database of the 100-year-old century homes from the Historic Society. 713 Hurst Green is listed in that database.
It is?
Yes.
Oh,
I hadn't even thought to look until right now.
Does it have a builder name?
No, it just says Lovejoy Tract. Let me open it back up. I'm sorry.
Is there by chance, oh wait, I'm on mute probably.
Nope, you're not muted. You're good.
Oh, okay. Is there a chance that you might be able to see if this house was somehow listed and not just they don't have a plaque?
That's what he said, is that
Okay.
that's what he was saying, was that it's actually on the spreadsheet.
This particular home, not the sister home.
Right, they are both there.
Oh,
It doesn't have the builder listed.
They usually have who they were built for, actually, not who built it, but who the first owner was.
so there was someone in this home that felt like it was historic. Maybe it was just simply, it was over 100 years old, but.
Steve, I can't remember, does it have the date of when it was put on to the Century Home list? I forget.
No, I don't see
Not
that
usually.
either.
When was the Century Home plaque? When did that start? Does anybody know year-wise?
Pretty early on from the formation of the Historical Society, so late 60s.
Because I
But
can't
obviously-
remember, Mara was the Edwin, was it Edwin Selvert? I can't remember when he left that house. Was it in the 50s?
I don't think we went forward to figure out when he left it. We just tried to go back as far as we could in the tax records. The one we could confirm was that he started living it in 1937.
Just because I know from earlier last month when we were researching, or the information that was provided, it did list him as a member of the Missouri Historical Society. So that's why I'm wondering how long he actually lived at this property versus when the century plaque program started, if there's some connection there.
And if I'm gonna remember this incorrectly, and I know that someone is on that could answer this question, but I believe that the current owners have been there at least 40 years. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think through my research with that, they've been there since the 80s.
Oh, hold on. They just wrote in the chat. Oh,
Yeah.
Liz, yes.
So they would have been the people requesting the plaque. It wasn't eligible until the 1990s.
So they moved in 1982. So they actually would likely have been the ones to request the century plaque for the house.
Right.
Well, let's see. It would have been a century home in 1999, 89. When was it built?
1899. So
Right.
1999, it was a century home.
Okay.
Oh, she says she's pretty sure it wasn't them.
Yeah.
But you're right, it wouldn't have been.
It wouldn't have been eligible until the late 1990s or early 2000.
So someone wouldn't have been able to have put it onto the list and gotten it designated until that time frame.
Right. They wouldn't have been able to apply until then.
I know from my personal experience, we had lived in our house for 2 years. We bought it when it was 98 years old, but as soon as it turned 2000 and, 100 years old, we applied.
And most people have experienced that the records sometimes conflict with each other, and they may be off by 3, 4, 5 years.
So true. We
Yeah.
found
Depending on when it gets
years.
registered, right?
Yeah. We went with the county listings for lack of a better number. but
Right.
It could have been,
They
offered.
wouldn't have listed this one due to the 725 next door. Would they? Like, I mean, if the people at 725 applied for their century plaque and got it, they're just driving by, you guys said they look like sister houses. They wouldn't just put 713 on that list, assuming.
It's my
No,
understanding you had to do an application
you do.
and pay for the plaque.
Right. There's
I
an
would imagine that whoever did the application for 725, they did the research for 713.
Could have been.
could very well be. Yeah,
They, for the price of a plaque, they could have been listed.
right. And not everybody puts those plaques outside. They have them framed in their living rooms and things like that too. So the lack of a plaque outside doesn't mean they don't have one.
Right.
Well, if anybody has any other questions or comments regarding this, otherwise, I think we should decide whether or not we want to extend this for another, I guess, till our next meeting, or I'm not sure on the time date. I know you said 120 days.
I mean,
So,
trying to make some determinations and giving, the reason why we put a time frame was that there's an this is as far out as it goes. So a decision has to be made within a certain time frame. If you, can make some determinations, and then we would definitely put it on the next agenda. We wouldn't just hold it off for multiple. If you decide you want to hold it, we would postpone it to the next meeting date.
Well, I hate to see us lose a building unless we have some indication that there may be something at the end of that rabbit hole, either in ownership or history of the house, I don't know that we're being fair to people to hold it over.
Do you feel like there are threads left to be pulled on? In other
I
words,
mean, like I said, through my research, we found names and I feel like it kind of dead ended from there. I don't personally have an ancestry.com subscription, but I know we were able to find, like the Lovejoys on there, but it just kind of ended with their children and I couldn't really find anything else. So it's difficult. It's very frustrating to me because I got very into this and was finding more and more. And I just felt like this, was very interesting. And I'd like to know who these people were. And it's hard for me to say, okay, none of them were prominent, because maybe they somehow did do something. We just can't find it. I don't know. And I don't know, like, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around like how to define who is prominent and who is not, especially if they were a longstanding family in the area. But as far as without being able to go to the recorder of deeds and actually find the actual deed copies, I pretty much found as much as I could about that land area right there. So unless we, like I said, try to find the names through like newspapers.com, I'm not really sure what else we're going to find. Which is, to me, it's very disappointing. But to Jane's point too, we can't just keep holding it up, hoping we'll find something if, we've kind of done our due diligence. And I don't know about going about designation, because if the owners currently know they want to sell it, I don't think that they're going to want to have it designated.
So I guess I would agree we don't want to hold people up too long, but we do have a time period and it's one more time would be it. And Webster is starting to lose houses and, we lose them and there is no more Webster Groves. Historic Webster Groves will be nothing more than a bunch of new homes then. And it won't be anything special at all, quite honestly. So I guess to me, I feel that it's our job. The whole point of the commission is to do more research and to do what we can with that research. And then if we don't find anything, then we just do what we do. But so for me, I'm willing to do something. I do have an ancestry.com account. I could look into that a little bit if I can. I don't know about going down. I know going down to Clayton can be really difficult. I've done that with my own house, and if you can only go for an hour, that might not be very much time. But I'm personally willing to put in a little bit of time to try to look into it if we want to do that, if anybody else is willing to. I do think we need to find something that makes it reasonable to tell people that we don't want their house, we don't want them to do what they want to do. But at the same point, like I said, this is historic Webster Groves. It isn't tear down historic Webster Groves. So, we should make sure that we've done what we can.
I agree with that. Once it's gone, it's gone. And there won't be any getting it back. And I would certainly be happy to follow up on the newspaper.com leads and see if that would lead us anywhere. And I do appreciate not wanting to hold people up, but I think that it's worth looking at these last few leads, just so when we do take our vote, we are comfortable that we have followed all of the potential leads to wherever they take us. I think that, as Angela said, we kind of owe it to Webster Groves to do our very best and follow those leads to the end, and then vote in accordance with where they take us.
Mara, I know we've talked about the sister property, and we're going to reach out to the Historical Society to see what information they have on that one, since they do have a plaque. I don't know if there's any way to send a letter to that residence and just see if they have any research information from looking into their own house. I mean, I don't know if that's something that we're even able to do, to talk to, to talk to a neighbor. I don't really know how much reach we have with that.
I think you're able to do it. They don't have to comply, obviously. I think we'd start with getting info from the Historical Society first and seeing if they have anything. If they don't, we could send a letter to the neighboring property.
I mean, personally, I feel like it's kind of worth it to do that. You don't know if they know kind of what's going on with this. I would think they would. It seems like kind of a, there's not a lot of houses like this on that street. And especially if their house is a sister house to this one, I don't think it would be a bad idea to kind of just reach out to them about it. So I guess let's take a vote on extending this for further research until our next meeting for a final vote. If anybody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to hold 713 Hurst Green Road for further research to the next meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I,
Is
Aye.
there anyone opposed? Okay.
So just as a reminder, next meeting date is April 12th. Carol, I will get our subscription going for newspapers.com and send that to you.
Okay.
Angela, you should have some of the names to look up in ancestry.com from the memo that I sent. And then I will reach out to the Historical Society and try to get information. And if that's not available, I will, if someone can draft kind of what they want to ask in the letter, I can use the information with our city letterhead to send it to the neighboring residents.
It's our next meeting, March 8th.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking way far ahead. I'm jumping. You are correct. March 8th.
Okay, just checking there.
I started to look at my calendar to see what I was missing here.
Yeah, time was flying.
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to get out of here, out of St. Louis for a while. I'm already jumping to April. For those that aren't seeing the chat, so some of the children of the current residents just wanted to say that one said, I'm the son of the current owners and appreciate the thoughtful conversation. One of the other children said they know that they don't have a plaque in the house. So that will be an interesting element because of the fact that the plaque's not there. So I just wanted to point that out because they are on and listening. And I had let them know it wasn't a public hearing, but if there was information to make sure that they could sit and listen. Okay, so March 8th, and I will work on those steps so that everyone has the things to do the research. And for the family members, you can continue to contact me if there's information that you have questions on.
Mara, is there an opportunity for us to submit information we find out to you and you disseminate it to the group?
Yes, Doug, so you weren't on last month, but I actually shared I have a OneDrive now on my computer, and all the files that we had found, so that every time Anne found a new plat or some new information, she went ahead and put them into the shared drive, and I will resend out the shared drive so everyone has it.
Is that what we're seeing in the information with the death certificates and the like?
All of that is in the
That's from
OneDrive.
Nan?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I went a little crazy one day. Like I just would find one thing and then I would like go to
Yeah.
another, and it was interesting finding some maps and seeing kind of the evolution from it being farmland to then in the 30s, and again without the actual deeds for the structure it's kind of difficult, but I had coworkers coming over to help me decipher handwriting on maps to see what a name looks like. So it was fun. But again, I'm very passionate about this. I really hope that we can save it. Because in my opinion, yes, it needs updating. Yes, it needs work, but the age, and I think there is history there. If hopefully we can find it, I think it's definitely worth saving. So I guess we'll move on to the next property that is up for demolition.
So,
820 Marshall Avenue.
so 820 Marshall Avenue. Oops. Oh, there we go. Sorry, 820 Marshall Avenue. So I usually give this staff information for you all. Existing single-family dwelling was built in 1939. We found no historic property inventory sheet for the property. It wasn't identified on our at-risk lists. It's a one-story bungalow structure. It's approximately 900 square feet in gross floor area. You'll see the photographs that show the existing conditions, and in case anyone drove by, the current owner is not the one who put it into the condition that it's in right now. It was a previous owner, the one who'd lived there for many, many years. And we had sent multiple letters, and at one point it was in court, trying to get it to be addressed, because all the siding had been taken off and it's been sitting in that condition actually for a couple of years now at this point. It changed hands twice. And the current owner, we've now said, it was mid-COVID, and he was supposed to be asking for demolition to build a new house, and nothing really happened. And so it's getting to that point where we have a repair or demolish letter, essentially, that says you must do this now. We're going to start, sending you to court, essentially. So the photos were in the packet. As you can see, again, all the siding was removed at one point, and it's been a couple years now that the neighbors have had to kind of put up with it looking like this. So staff did not have any hesitation in saying that there was anything significant or of note for this particular structure.
I want to point out, I went through the Google Street View all the way back 4 years. That's when the siding came off. So it's been that way for a long time.
Long time. Yeah, I had one neighbor recently just send another going, I'm trying to be patient. And I said, and I'm trying to work through the process, and I apologize. Every time it changes hands, we have to start the process over again with a new set of giving them an initial letter, repair or demolish, then you go through other steps. So it does take quite a while.
And I wanted to feel for this house, but I just don't.
Well, it's sad when it sits in neglect. It becomes a point where it's almost more safety issue than worth trying to keep.
My compassion goes to the neighborhood at this point. The neighbors who have had to live with this.
So The downside is they get construction.
That's true.
Anybody have any other questions regarding this property?
Are we looking for a motion?
I think so.
Let me do this. I move that we approve the application for demolition.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Demolition was approved for 820 Marshall Avenue. And Mara, can I just say before we move on, I know this has been kind of frustrating with the Hirsch Green property that we're trying to do a lot of research, and that's taken up a lot of my time because I know it's kind of pressing. I did bring one to Mara's attention a couple weeks ago that my neighbor alerted me to. That was purchased directly from, it was an elderly woman living there. She sold it to a developer who I'm assuming promised her they were going to rehab it, and they're actually a new home builder. And they haven't submitted anything to the city for demolition. It happens to be in my eyesight, so I'm keeping an eye on it. I have my neighbor keeping an eye on it. We're hoping that, you know, we can catch some workers there to get the city involved. We already know they shut the water off. In this house, there's absolutely no reason from an exterior point of view that it should be demolished. It's just, I think, given the location and the situation where they acquired it. So that might be one that will come down the pipeline soon. And I've already started trying to do some research on it because it will become a Century property late this year, early next year. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I've got my eye on one that's a potential risk. So with that, I guess we will pull my agenda up here.
You've got your 2 projects. So I just put little placeholder slides for you all to talk about your 2 projects. And I threw up a couple bullets of what are your next steps? In this case, database or research, whether you want a Walker designation. In case of the other one, next steps, Walker designation. We didn't put anything in the packet this time. I know between not being able to meet in person and then snowstorms and other craziness, there wasn't much else. I had not gotten anything to Angela. I know she had said she would potentially step up with a little bit of the moving forward with the lustrons. Steve's the one who's been focusing on the Joy Built, and we talked about maybe having a OneDrive for that research that everyone had access to, because I know it was in a Google Drive, but the city, I can't access the Google Drive. So we talked about a couple different ways to do these different things. So I'll just leave that to you all. Oh, before you do that, do you want to have Carol introduce herself? And then, well, everybody introduce themselves, but because it doesn't look like we're going to get Daisha or Michael. Michael said he would try to be on by 7:15, but it doesn't look like we're going to get him. And we don't have James. Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Carol Denke. I'm an architect. I practiced for 29 years, and out of all of the building types and project types I've done, preservation is where my heart is. It's not leaving there anytime soon. I've done a lot of historic projects for the public sector and the private sector, commercial, a lot of residential, a great deal of experience doing historic tax credits project using both state and federal tax credits. And I've worked on everything from very modest homes to some of the most splendid homes in the Central West End. So I look forward to the opportunity to use all that experience to benefit the city and also to keep my hand in work that I really, really love. So I hope it turns out to be a win-win.
I'm just gonna kind of go in order of others that I can see on my screen. So Jane, do you want to?
Sure. I'm Jane Porchy, and I still consider myself a newbie to this committee. I was president of the Historical Society for a number of years, but this is my third house in Webster Groves, one that was built in 1906, one that was brand new in Webster Forest, and now I'm in a track house in South Webster that was built in 1952. So I run the gamut of kinds of housing I personally have lived in Webster Groves.
Steve?
Hi, Carol. We've met several times, actually.
Yes.
I've been on this commission for, I guess, is it 2 years now or 3? I don't know. It's been a while. I'm an architect at HOK and I enjoy the crap out of this.
Anne?
Well, first of all, welcome, Carol. We're really happy to have you. I've been on the HPC, I think 3.5 years. And I've been chair for a couple months, a few months. I don't know, time is kind of crazy right now with Zooms and then going back in person and then Zooms again. But my husband and I have lived in Webster for 12 years. We live in a century home and it turned a century while we were here. We call it our forever home, and we did the research for our plaque. And I went to Webster University. I've worked in Webster. I've loved this area and always knew I wanted to live here. And I love just the historic aspect of it and how documented it all is. It's fascinating to me. And so I really love being a part of this commission and hoping to help preserve it.
Doug?
Hello, I'm back. I am a former member of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'd been on it for a number of years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then at the end of last year, I decided in a, I don't know, COVID moment that I was going to shed myself of volunteerism. And then the new year came along and I decided that I would focus on my passions. And this is one of my passions. I live in a century home and in a historic district. And I, like Jane, have lived in 3 homes in Webster. My first house was a tract house in South City, the south of the interstate, which was just a wonderful. I was single at the time. It was just wonderful. Nothing ever went wrong with it. It was just cutest house in the world. And then I moved to a larger house next to Lightburn Park, which was fun for animals and walking and things. And then I got married. The house wasn't big enough. And then my wife and I bought this house in Webster Park and have loved it. And I do have a passion for keeping the the history of Webster Groves alive and well. I guess I am the oldest on the group as far as longevity. And I was on the commission when Mara led the charge to revise our ordinances. Oh, and you were on that too, when we had a beautiful home north of Kirkham that was demolished. It was well over 100 years old. It wasn't in a historic district, and we just didn't have any power to stop it. And that really energized me on these projects. And so I'm glad to be back. Thank you for having me back.
And so I know Angela and Carol know each other because they both also serve on the Architecture Review Board. So Angela, you pretty much know everybody, but you can also introduce yourself too. I'm not going to make you not be able to say hi.
Yeah, I'm Angela Thompson. Yeah, I guess everybody does know me. I guess I didn't know, I don't know that I know Doug, but because I've only been on the board, I don't know, six months maybe. But yes, I'm an architect as well. I've worked in historic preservation for 20 some odd years, both as a historian and as doing renovations and all that kind of thing with historic buildings. More commercial than residential, but a lot of residential in certain kinds of ways too. So yes, I love preservation. It's just sort of something that you can't get away from. So yeah, I enjoy this commission too. I've really enjoyed it so far.
So
Oh, and I
Anne,
do live in an old house, live in a 100-year-old house here in Webster.
So Anne, one really quick thing, just so you know, when they appointed Doug back on and appointed Carol, there was a little bit of a debate. It was funny because they didn't have the debate when they appointed Angela, that they were concerned about having people serving on HPC and ARB together, because somehow they thought if you potentially stopped someone from demolishing a house at HPC and then it went to ARB and then you didn't let them do their addition or whatever that was, there was a concern about that. So they are asking me to put together some sort of policy that might mean that either Angela and Carol have to recuse themselves from one if it's going to go to the other or vice versa. I'll still try to figure out. I rarely see this happening, but they found the one and only case where it possibly could have happened, and gave that as an example. So I made sure to let them know our designation as a certified local government, which is our historic designation through the state of Missouri, is prefaced on the fact that the HPC is supposed to have professionals like architects on the commission. And we actually could potentially lose our certification if we don't have professionals like that, whether it's historians or architects. So I tried to make sure that they knew that when they were having this discussion at the council meeting the other night. And you will probably see a request from me soon. I'm very, very delayed in doing our yearly certification paperwork with the state because they gave us something new in the fall that required like resumes of all of our members. And at the time, we had a lot of people like leaving and coming and different things like that. And so I got delayed. And Yolanda is helping me to pull all that together, but I haven't really gotten much farther. So that might be something that you all are going to see coming up soon to make sure that our certification is up to date, because we've been certified with the state for a number of years, and we want to keep that certification.
Okay.
Can I ask so I guess I think of it as two different things. How is that a conflict? I guess I don't quite.
So I think they thought it was like you'd get a double whammy that you could deny them twice. Like, so the example they gave was, you all will remember, Angela and Carol will remember the house in the Central Webster Historic District that you all denied their addition, and then they appealed it to the city council, and then the city council overrode your decision and allowed them to do the pretty large addition on it, on Gray. That one originally came to Historic Preservation Commission to be demolished. And Historic Preservation said they weren't going to give them a certificate of, or they held the hearing and said that they were not comfortable giving them a certificate of appropriateness to demolish it. So it was kind of like a double whammy, like it got first said, nope, you can't demolish it. And then it went to ARB for a couple months with, no, your addition isn't appropriate. So that was what was referenced.
Okay, so one thing I would like to say to that is that house no longer would be a contributing element, contributing property to the district. So it actually, in my view, this council should determine whether, and from a, technically that's our, what we are to determine you can't remove a property from the district. So unless we say so. So that would, in the world of double, there's no such thing.
I know that
we could lose our, like you said, we could
lose our
certification.
Yeah.
So, we either, I guess I still feel like we either are historic Webster Groves or we are not. And
you're fine. I jumped in on the city council meeting with my concerns. And so I did jump on. I wasn't actually even on it. I was just sitting and listening to the meeting. And I sent a quick text to some of the staff that were here at City Hall, and they pulled me on. So I was able to say that. And they just asked that we look at a policy if there was potentially a conflict. I'm going to look into whether there are any issues or concerns. Again, that was the only example that we could pull up because I did not see any concerns overall. I really didn't. I just wanted you all to know that I was asked of that to create some sort of policy so that supposedly, so that there can't be like a double whammy, which again, I agree with you. There is no, just saying,
yeah, that's a double whammy to Webster, not to the applicant.
It totally is. But you have a very specific set of policies that you follow for certificate of appropriateness for a demolition. Since I've been here, we have not given a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a contributing structure within the city. And that's in the last 10 years. We have not given it. We've given it to accessory structures that were questionably whether they were contributing or non-contributing, but we have yet to demolish a contributing structure since I've been here.
Well, that's good.
So I don't know how much you want to get into these other projects, or I know I hate always saying this over and over. It's hard for us to get very far along. But we could continue to discuss these two. We did approve at the last meeting subcommittees. So you can have subcommittee meetings. And if you want to have smaller group committee meetings, you just need to let us know and we can get the agenda set. It is my understanding, and of course this could change by March. This week is the last week that we're at virtual only. Starting next week, we're supposed to be able to go back to both in person and virtual with masks. So there could be a chance that for our March meeting, we might be able to be in person, but we will still have the virtual option.
I know for the Joy Built homes, I was interested in forming a subcommittee for that, and I haven't had the time, but I do need to reach out. I was going to do a post in the Webster Grove Century Homeowners Facebook page to see if anybody would be interested in joining that and helping us research. So that is on my to-do list. So I definitely plan to do that prior to our next month meeting. And then Mara, as far as how you have it on here, whether we want to do a another historic walk or a designation.
I know kind of for talking points.
Yeah, well, but I mean, I know when we were kind of talking about this, it was more about doing another walk. And then I know we've had talk about in the past trying to get Tuxedo Park designated, and we kind of haven't really talked about designation too much regarding these projects. Is that something that if we do, oh, I'm sorry.
It would be much more difficult just because it's not a defined area. Unless we could figure out some sort of, defined area. I just threw it on there. Like if there were certain very important ones that are not currently designated, creating the designation. It was interesting in the conversation with the children of the owners of the house on Her Screen. They were sort of surprised that it was suddenly coming up that we were interested in the home. And I explained, I said, there are hundreds of homes that we could, if we all had the volunteer time to do, I mean, we could be designating every day for the next, 30 years. because there are so many historic homes in Webster Groves. And I explained to them that it was, it's really only when it suddenly comes before us to be demolished that it gives us the opportunity to maybe get a little bit more active. So I don't know if there's something else that we can do. I'm not sure what it is, but I just wanted to throw that out there and just put that as a talking point if you wanted to discuss it. But it also might be more the discussion that happens with a subcommittee.
Well, and I mean, is it possible, and I know this is a broad, but is it possible to do both? Like if we wanted to do a walk with the Joy Built homes and then further into our research, it's like, okay, let's do a walk, but we could also possibly designate this so it would spin off into another project. I mean, is it possible to do both of those?
Yeah, you could start with a walk, and then if there's a cluster of homes in a particular area that aren't already in a historic district, you could potentially do something that creates a boundary and then just excludes the ones that aren't within it. I believe it might be worth talking with the state about some of the thoughts that they have.
Okay.
And
It's
then we
been a
could,
while since we've done a walk. It would be nice to have one again, just to invigorate that concept, which has been so popular.
and Doug, you've missed out on the incredible research that's been done on this already. If you look back on our YouTube page, you can see the last couple of historic HPC meetings. And I think it was, is it two meetings ago, or maybe last month's meeting and the meeting before?
I think it was the last two meetings, and quite honestly, if I could drive for a few minutes, I think.
Yeah, I will stop sharing
I
this.
feel like it was the January meeting, honestly, because I felt like it was
I
right
think it was
after
the January,
Christmas.
but it was also, I think, I missed the December meeting too, and he presented a lot in the December meeting.
Okay. I've
Oh,
been
yeah,
doing a
there you
bunch
go,
more
Doug.
poking around. Here we go, Doug.
Okay.
These are all of the building permits that I've identified that were pulled by the Joy family between 1908 and 1947. We don't have records before that, and that's when the last of the Joys died, was in 1947. So this is basically 40 years. I've also imported, where's my cursor? The 100-year-old structures. This is the Historic Society database. A lot of them are the same houses. A lot of them are not. So then I got on the county website and I said, well, exactly what are the boundaries of the subdivisions that the Joys were building in? The Edward Joy subdivision, the Edward Joy second subdivision, Crown Point. So there's Joy Place, and I think Gallagher Place. Old Orchard Park is where they started. So I found the boundaries of the different subdivisions, but that's not enough. There's more. These are all of the houses in the Joy subdivisions on the county website. And I can go in and I can look at these and see when they were built. Oh, that was built in 1925. Well, we know the building permit, the records for that. We know it's not a Joy home. So that's not a deal. But if we could look at this one, no, wait. I'm sorry, I'm getting all mixed up. This one was built during the years when the Joys were building in Old Orchard. So the time period's right, the style is right. I looked at it on Google Street View, but we don't have building records for it. So it's probably a Joy home. But I don't know how to do the research beyond there. So all of the little green dots are probably Joy built homes. that's where I've gotten to.
And you
Well,
also have your photos connecting to a lot of them too.
I do.
He also has photos.
That's awesome.
But this is what I can do without leaving my chair.
And Doug, we kind of came to a decision, I feel like last month's meeting, where for a while we kept tossing around ideas of, do we work on a Joy Built house project? Do we work on a Lush Drawn house project? Do we work on a Sears kit home? And just knowing how intensive research can get, it just seems very daunting to have 3 different type houses that we need to research. So, and with all the work that Steven's already put into the Joy Built homes, we kind of decided that this project we're going to try to move forward with, and form a subcommittee to help with additional research outside of our monthly meetings. Angela also wanted to possibly look into the Lush Drawn homes. So it's not that we're tabling all of them, but it kind of just felt like we were going around and around in a circle talking about these 3 projects, and we felt like in order to move forward and actually get something done, to kind of hone in our focus on this one. So
Mhm.
Now,
Sounds like a great plan.
I can tell you that if we wanted to create a walk, this is probably the area to start. There's a bunch of them already documented.
Mhm.
We could also reference back over to this area where there's a bunch, and then down in Sherwood. That's more of a drive. Bring your golf cart.
Where was this big cluster? Now, where's that located? That's right off of,
That's right off of Lockwood and
Bend.
Baum Park.
okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, there's quite a few.
Ignore this one. It's been demoed. That's not the original house at that location. There's a D.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's where I am.
Wow, very impressive.
Thank you.
Very nice. That's a lot of work.
So back to your bullet points. I don't know what the next steps are. I feel like I don't really know where we're headed, and it would be good to know where we're headed before I take too many more steps. Do we want to create a walk? Do we need to set up a subcommittee to make these determinations? Or does everybody just have a feel for this? I don't know.
I mean, I definitely think we move forward with the walk. Obviously, it's not your traditional walk, as you said, because they're not all right there together. But I think that's okay, because obviously this is a special builder to our community. I definitely would like to put feelers out there for a subcommittee, because I think the more volunteer helping hands we have on this, the more research we can get done, or any task that we need completed in order to complete a walk. So again, like I said, that's something that I'm planning on between now and the next meeting, is trying to get some new subcommittee members involved with this project, if you're okay with that.
Please.
So I think none of you were on when they did the last walk. In fact, I wasn't technically on. My staff was on HPC when we did the last walk. So last walk was created mainly to become an actual booklet. There might be some questions or conversations about making this immediately a digital one to start, because I know budgets are short, and printing them up might not be as easy to do, especially if it's a longer walk. So maybe trying to figure out how we can do something with the GIS mapping system, tying the information in, and maybe creating a digital walk, which would give you a little bit more flexibility, being such a big area that if someone just happened to be taking their neighborhood walk and wanted to click on and see what ones they were passing in that particular, they might change where they take their regular evening walk to see other areas, might give some flexibility to it. So I know I don't have a GIS person right now. She's out on medical leave, and I'm not sure whether she's coming back or we're going to have someone new, but I do know we have the system that would allow us to make it into one of those maps that we kind of briefly talked about where it could be interactive. So throwing it out there.
All right, well, let's get some more hands recruited. I'll keep poking away at this in my spare time.
I love the idea of the interactive kind of walk. The North Webster Walk, I happen to be on that committee. And so much of it was, here's where the goat farm was, but it's not there anymore. Here's where the grocery store was, and it's not there anymore. And we've got all this rich grouping of buildings all over town that are there.
If no one has anything else, I will still, I know I'm supposed to get some information to Angela for the lustrons.
I did look into that a little bit, actually.
Oh, good.
The most fascinating thing I found out was the very first publicly sold, and maybe all of you know this, I don't know, I didn't, but first publicly sold lustron house came to Webster Groves, Missouri. I believe it was demolished because I looked through the permits to find which ones were early, and the earliest one was near Carroll. It was 224 Simmons was the first permit, but there were two others on that are still there on Simmons that had their permit pulled early enough that they could have been the first one as well. So it's 224, 226, and 228 Simmons. And then that other one's been removed, but 241 actually has a later date for the permit. But since there's only about 1,200 of them in the whole country left, and there were only 2,400 ever built. So, we actually have a lot of them, amazingly. Being that they're so rare, though, many states have already done, we have the example of 2 states that have done the National Register forms, and really that's kind of all that there is almost to do would be for us to put together a National Register form. We could do a walk or something like that and inform everybody. I think it'd be really cool to find out the homes actually have serial numbers, so you can find out what number they were when they were built, if they still have their tag. That would be kind of interesting to find out too. But I guess in some ways, to me, this is exactly the opposite of the Joy built homes. That a lot of research has already been done on the whole lustron situation of how the homes were built and about the company and all that sort of thing. And the company, it was one company in St. Louis who was responsible for building the homes and all that. So it's not the same kind of digging that would be necessary for the Joy built. It would be in some ways pretty straightforward work. But so I guess, yeah, I would love to find out if any of the people who currently live in these homes are interested in having their home on the National Register. Of course, you could, like you said, you can put them on there even if they don't want them on there, because it really is, that would be a lot different than saying they can't remove it, I guess. That, but it's interesting. Actually, most states that have them, except for Missouri, have a National Register form. So I thought that was kind of funny, because you had said that the people from Brentwood were interested in doing something. So they have quite a few as well. There, and in Kansas City, in the Missouri part, there's several. But anyway, So the homes are kind of interesting, and if we could get the list of owners, start there and see what people have to say.
I can at least get you the basic information using this list that we had, which I put up on the screen, of the ones that are still there and not removed.
Okay, and I noticed that 44 Hart, it says it's removed, but it's still there.
No, new house. New house.
It is?
Yeah,
Was it just recently?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, in the last couple years.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, you guys approved it at ARB. It took them a while to tear it down. And
Oh, I
they were
bet.
living in the house next door while they were building that on this lot.
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing that I read. These are steel, enamel coated steel buildings with every single part being steel. They weighed a ton to get that little tiny house on the train to its location, but they could build them in 2 months. So
Angela, do you think you need more people to create a subcommittee for the Lustrons? Or do you
Probably
want to
not.
just start with letters?
yeah, I guess probably not yet, just because like that was what I first looked into it and thought, well, there's kind of a lot of information already, but to do a form, we would need to look into the more local history of the Lustron homes, which is, again, it's a little bit limited in what it would really be, since one company did all of the homes. It's not, and there's only so many of them, not like the Joy homes. It's not all over at the place. So yeah, before we form a committee, maybe figure out how many people there would even be things to do, so.
Okay. I'll get information for you. And then Ann, I'll wait for information on any subcommittee meetings so that I can get them posted. And then I will get the rest of the information that everybody needs for her screen.
Okay, and then the newspaper.com.
Yep.
I'm assuming you'll set that up and then email us passwords or whatever to use.
Yep.
All right, well, does anybody have any questions or anything else to add? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
I
Anyone opposed? All right,
Thanks
Well-
all.
we'll see you
Thank you.
guys
You,
in March.
Bye, everybody.
In person in March.
Yeah.
that would be nice.
Bye.
Night,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.